Hello, and welcome to Insightful Conversations with your host, 3 Principles practitioner, Del Adey-Jones. Join her each week as she welcomes some of the world's leading 3 Principles teachers and practitioners who share how this understanding has dramatically improved the quality of their lives and the lives of those they work with.
I'm so thrilled to have with me today the amazing Brooke Wheeldon Reece. Brooke is the president and CEO of the S.P.A.R.K initiative, a nonprofit organization located in Tampa, Florida. She is the creator and co-author of the evidence-based S.P.A.R.K mentoring programs, which are currently being taught to thousands of children around the world. After her brother-in-law's suicide in early 2012, Brooke knew there was more to the mind than she understood. She found a home with the S.P.A.R.K initiative after watching her husband come out of a deep depression with seemingly little effort. She now dedicates her work to creating sustainable change throughout all populations via mentoring, coaching, and teaching an understanding of the mind. Brooke lives in Florida with her husband, Will, and their 5 children. Welcome, Brooke. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's wonderful. So 5 children.
5, yes.
So you're in the perfect line of work then, clearly working with children.
Yeah, so 3 of them are my niece and 2 nephews that we just adopted, and I have 2 biological girls as well. So.
Oh, that's so incredible. So how did that come about?
The adoption?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
The 5 were my brother-in-law who committed suicide in 2012. They were his children, or the 3. I'm sorry, they were his children, and they ended up in foster care through a myriad of things, and we found out about 2 years ago. So based on the work I do, obviously, being family, we decided to take them in. Yeah. And the adoption was final in August.
Oh, beautiful. Oh, that's so amazing and so beautiful. So tell me, how did you first come across the principles? And first of all, I'm so sorry to hear about your brother-in-law. That's tragic for any family.
Yeah, I think it was through that experience I came across the principles. So to make a long story short, my husband kind of didn't react to the suicide for about a year. And I mean, he did react. I feel like he grieved a little bit, but on the year anniversary of my brother-in-law's death, my husband did this kind of, I don't know, it was like a switch of personality. That's the only way I can describe it is, what I know now is he went into his mind and started saying, what if I could do this? What if I did this? And started kind of second guessing himself. But within the span of 3 months, he went from a completely functioning part of our family. And my husband is like the guy that will always be outside playing with the kids, always loves to cook dinner. I mean, very, very active. And he went from that to hearing voices. And it scared me to such a degree that I really thought, oh, this is how our marriage is going to end, because he's completely warped into another person that I didn't recognize. And just around that same time, I've always worked in nonprofit, and around that same time, the organization that I was working with was closing, as a lot of nonprofits do. And I went to a community kind of meeting for nonprofit leaders, and there was someone there doing a presentation on the Modelo Project. And the Modelo Project is, the short version of that is just a project they did in the projects, where they took the principles in and kind of turned an entire community around. So there was someone doing a presentation on that, and there was something she said that in my mind I thought, I don't know what she's talking about, but I think it could help my husband. So I followed her out, and because I also needed another job, I knew that. I said, I heard you were working with teens, I'm really interested. And I went through a training, and to be honest with you, I went through this training for 6 weeks, and I kind of was like, yeah, okay, this isn't a big deal. I mean, these people are really talking like it's a big deal, but it's not. And so during that time, I went home to my husband and kind of just spoke about it from that point. Like, I don't know what these people are making a big deal about, but they're saying it's all thought. Of course it's all thought. And I said something to that extent. And about a month later, my husband came to me and said, I just want you to know, I stopped taking my medication a month ago, and I'm okay now. And I freaked out. I said, you can't just stop taking. I still believe that it's not medically safe to just stop taking your medicine. And he looked at me and he said, well, I don't understand, because you're the one that told me it was just thought. And it was at that moment that I realized, oh my gosh, people don't know this.
Yeah.
And this is a big deal, because I got my husband back, and I was kind of unsure of it for a long time, but now it's been 6 years, and we've never looked back. But it was one of those, because I'm kind of a skepticist, and it was one of those things that, had I not seen it for myself, I wouldn't believe it, type of thing.
And what fascinates me, though, is that you already knew it was all thought, and you thought everybody else would know that too, because I certainly didn't.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't think at the level I do see it now. Like, there was definitely layers of that unfolded for me, and there's still layers of that unfold for me. But I could see clearly that whatever he was doing, because it was a year later, it wasn't happening to him, right? Like, he was doing it to himself. So I could see that. If that makes sense.
No, absolutely, because there was a time delay. So, when it's so close to the event, it's harder to separate it out. But when you say, when there's that delay for a year, and then you see it clearly, it was coming from his thinking, and what he was, making meaning of that thinking. And then, as you say, feeding it with, what if I'd done this, or could I, what didn't I see, or things like that. And we all find ourselves doing that. Yeah. Sometimes it's so close to the event that we just feel it's coming from the event. It's not coming via our thought. So that's a wonderful story. I didn't know that. How did you come to, first of all, tell us what S.P.A.R.K stands for, the acronym.
So S.P.A.R.K stands for Speaking to the Potential, Ability, and Resilience Inside Kids. And what it stands for us is just that inner intelligence, that wisdom that guides us through life. That's your S.P.A.R.K. And so that's, we've developed programs around that. And the way I came into this work is during that time where my husband was going through that, when I went to the 6-week training, and then I kind of left the training, and I got a job working in mergers and acquisitions at a telephone company.
Wow.
And it was horrible. And during that time when my husband kind of had his transformation, people were emailing me videos, and they were kind of talking to me about the work that they were doing. And when I saw that, I really kind of took interest in the videos. And so it was almost like I had to go backwards and do detective work. I'm like, wait a minute, what are these people saying? I apparently wasn't listening.
So that's it. Who was the 6-week training with?
At that time, it was with the organization that I run now, and Chip and Jan Chipman and Judy Sedgman.
Oh, wonderful.
We're all part of that.
Yeah. And so for that 6 weeks, you were not that impressed?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I was, I was just kind of like, I saw a few things that were really helpful. One, I saw, I used to think that I was really, really good at reading people and analyzing people, and I thought that was a strength of mine. And I saw that instead of that being a strength of mine, that was just me making up a whole lot of stories about people, and how would I know if that's true or not?
Yeah.
So I saw that. And then the other thing that I really did see was that I would worry about my future a lot, and the future of my kids. And 99% of the worry that I was doing was for naught, because once the event that I was worried about, or the circumstance that I was worried about, actually happened, I knew what to do, or I had the answer.
Yeah.
So I could see really quickly that I never thought I was an anxious person, but I could see really quickly that I didn't need to do all that. And that just took so much off me.
Mm-hmm. I know, it's amazing. I firmly believe that, when I have anxiety for the future, I always have this little voice saying, is it worth giving up this present moment worrying about something you have no idea? And like you said, what we can't anticipate is the wisdom that's going to come through us in that moment when that moment occurs. We can't account for that. We can't imagine what that would be. So I think it's wonderful that you saw that. And I think we don't realize how busy our minds are until sometimes it settles, and then we're like, oh, we were living in that place of stress and anxiety we didn't even know we were.
Well, and for me, it looked like it was responsible to do that.
Yeah.
It would be irresponsible not to try to plan for the future. But I just didn't know that intelligence would come through. Like, I didn't see that yet. And once I saw that, it just does, like you said, it doesn't make sense to try to plan for the future. You do what you can.
Well, exactly.
Right?
We're not reckless, but we don't use unnecessary energy, projecting into a future we don't even know yet. So tell me about, so now, I mean, this is incredible, and I know you have a lot of evidence and, reports on the success of this program. So tell me, I love hearing the personal stories. So tell me some of the feedback that you've been getting.
So after my husband had this kind of transformation, one of the board presidents said, "Hey, I think you would be great. We need a director." And I said, "Okay." So I wanted out of my job. Honestly, that's the only reason I took it at that time. Like, there's something here, and I don't like my job right now.
It's enough.
Yeah. But so really quickly, I saw that if kids, like my brother-in-law was a kid when he passed away. He was 23 years old. In my mind, he was just a kid. And really quickly, I saw if kids could see this, it would give them the hope that they need to maybe not make the next decision, or at least have different options. Like when my brother-in-law passed away, or when anyone does that, I can't imagine it looks like there's another option.
Yeah, absolutely.
To them. And so I could see really quickly that if nothing else, this understanding gives people more options in the moment, because it gives them hope that it's not going to stay like that forever. So my background is in nonprofit and curriculum development, and the S.P.A.R.K initiative used to be called the Cypress Initiative, and they were just starting to get away from jails and look at a more preventative approach. And so when I came in, they were just starting in schools. And so it just seemed really clear to me we needed curricula and programs that we could test, because schools are so much based on evidence. And so that's what we've done. But what I've seen, we're a very small team. There's 4 of us, and people are using this around the world, but we are actually locally in classrooms and with youth at least twice a week. So in the work that I've seen, that it's so interesting to me, because kids are so close to this already. They're so present already. And I know we don't think that because of electronics, but comparatively speaking, adults and children and even teens, teens are so much more present than you know. And so they kind of get it in a way that's like, oh yeah, it makes sense. Yep, cool. But the ones that we see, we work in jails now too with the youth, and that's been almost my favorite kind of group to work with, because they have a lot more to lose, I guess. You know what I mean? Like they're kind of at a bottom point where the kids in regular schools aren't. And we were doing this lesson one time about fear. and we were just talking about movies, right? Like, you know how you can go to the movies and get really scared, but you know it's not real. And we're kind of making that relationship between movies and real life. Like, that's what your mind is. It's just like a movie, and you know it's not real. You know when it is, right? Like, you know when someone's about to attack you and you need to run, right? But you also know when you're in the movies that no one's actually coming to get you. You know the difference. Well, that's how your mind works. Your mind creates these stories that look really, really real, but you can differentiate between when it's time to run or when you're just making up a scary story about what could happen in the future or what has to happen, you know? And so we were talking about fear. And I said, so when we were having this long conversation, I said, is this making sense, you guys? Like, are you seeing anything? And this kid in the front who barely talked goes, huh, yeah. And I was like, oh, tell me about it. He said, I wouldn't be here right now if I knew this. And I said, oh, were you afraid? Like, was something happening? You were afraid? And he said, no, I was just bored. And I thought, because I was bored, I was going to go crazy if I didn't go out with my friends that night. I didn't know that bored just came from my mind. I thought it was telling me I had to go do something. And that's just a perfect example of, I didn't say that, you know, we didn't talk about boredom. We were just talking about fear in movies. But he saw that, oh, my feelings aren't telling me anything about what I have to do. And the moment you see that, you have more options.
Yeah, that's incredible. And it's like you said, it's amazing that he was even able to, you know, I mean, because I'm sure a lot of people would say, yeah, I had a moment when I was afraid. That works for fear. But the fact that he saw it on a wider level, that it wasn't just the feeling of fear, it was boredom too, or any other thought that just comes into your mind in that moment.
Yeah. And it's just so, I mean, for me, I was like, whoa, he just got something, right?
Yeah.
That's really awesome. But also that's just, you know, like, that's just a small part about what we talk about, but that is life changing, right? Just seeing that your feelings aren't telling you anything about what you have to do.
Yeah.
That's huge for kids.
Yeah. Or anything about them too. I mean, I know that, you know, I mean, I concocted a story about myself at a very early age and then sort of just carried it around, and I never thought to challenge it. It was, to me, it was just the truth of who I was. And then you live within the confines of that story.
Yeah, it's a really good point.
Yeah.
We're always talking about getting curious. And I think that's something that I didn't learn growing up, right? Maybe I wasn't at respect, but I didn't learn to be curious about much, right? I just learned to learn what people were teaching me and go about my business. And when you start to like catch on to your thinking and go, now is that true? Wait a minute, right?
Yeah, I know. And just you know, the repetitive thoughts that we get, that I used to think, well, if I keep having those thoughts, then they're true. They're saying something about me. You know, I am my thinking. And to find out that I wasn't at, you know, age 55 was a bit of a shock. You know, it's like, gosh, I wish that had happened earlier. So what are the other things that you teach children besides, you know, the fear and the thinking?
Well, what we teach them is the kind of, it's all of that, but it's also what my favorite part about what we teach is this intelligence behind life and this intelligence that shows up for you. So a lot of times kids are expecting us to go in and talk about, if you learn this, you could have better behavior type of things. And we do that in a little bit of like, you know, how to make better decisions. But really what we talk about is that there is this intelligence, we call it your spark or the spark, that is in everything, and it's in you too. And regardless of who's around you, you have this ability to access your spark, and your spark gives you, like, it gives you an even playing field. And I think that's huge for kids. Kids have this idea, like you were saying, that, oh, she's smarter than me, or he's better than me at this, or I could never I'm not good at that subject. And one of the things that we really talk to them about is beyond all your thinking about whatever it is, that spark's there. And given the attention, just looking in the direction of whatever you think you can't do will get you closer to that. And you have this creative capacity inside of you to solve your problems and give you solutions and create really cool ideas.
Oh, I love that. And it's so, I mean, I know when I was growing up, I had this, you know, it was the comparison thing too. And when I came across this understanding, just that thing that we are all born equal. You know, I had such a story about that I wasn't equal to anybody else. So, but just to know that is just, like you say, it just evens the playing field out immediately. And then also knowing that there's something inside them that they can always rely on to guide them, and it's there, you know, constantly. We're made of it.
Yeah, and so for kids, what's huge is, you know, I need more self-confidence, or I need to be smarter. I got to really work at, being, having good self-esteem, or I got to really work hard to get over that past traumatic experience I had. And what we're showing them is there's nothing to get over. You're just uncovering what's there, right? There's nothing to build. Like you don't have to build your confidence and the girl next to you's got more than you. And no, it's just there sometimes. And then sometimes you get caught up, and it happens to everybody.
I know. This is so. I'm listening to this, thinking, oh my God, the suffering that is going to be alleviated from this understanding. You know, people thinking just like that confidence. It's like, I'll be more confident when I achieve this, and these sort of overachieving, that lifelong, pursuit of happiness on the outside, and I'll be happy when, or I'll be confident when I have another sort of certificate or another training, or, I mean, that was my race wheel that I was on. So tell us about some of the statistics, because I know that you gave a talk at the conference in London, and some of the videos, I wish we could share them here, of some of the kids talking was just magical. But share some of the statistics that are coming out.
So like I said, we do research on our programs, and we measure things like knowledge of well-being and impulse control and resilience and communication and decision-making and problem solving. But two things I'm most excited about when we talk about our statistics is, one, that we are showing a significant improvement in impulse control. And if you've ever read any research about youth or worked with youth, you know that their frontal lobe is not as developed, and impulse control can be looked at as like a daunting task to help them with. And what we're showing is this understanding increases their impulse control and their emotional regulation, which is huge for mental well-being, substantially. But the most exciting thing for me is the resilience. And resilience is scored in different ways, and I won't get into that boringness. But one of the ways it's scored into is relatedness. And what that means is how, like, when a tough circumstance happens, how much ability do you have to relate to the person that is on the other side of your tough experience? And what we're seeing is that these young people who are the first ones to go, no, it's her fault because she pushed me, and they did this, and if my mom wouldn't have done this, and if my dad wouldn't be in jail, and if my, they're the first ones to do that. And what we're seeing is that they're, through this understanding of how the mind works, they have more compassion for people, and even those that have put them maybe in those tough circumstances, because they're young and they don't have much control over their life at their age, and they can relate to them.
Yeah.
And that's increasing. And can you imagine a world where your first reaction might be, upset or offended or angry. But the very next thing is like, wait a minute, they're doing the best they can. Yeah. And really knowing that in your heart.
Yeah. Yeah, that's just incredible. I mean, that's something you can say it says like platitudes of oh well they did the best but when you have this understanding and you recognize when you have been a victim of your thinking, then if that's happening to me, then clearly it's happening to everybody else too, and everybody is really doing the best they can with the thinking they're having. And
yeah. And that's one of the things that we always, when we train teachers, when they're going to teach the program to their youth, I kind of start off with like, I'm just going to tell you guys, this is the 100% accountability model. And sometimes and they're like, yes, for kids, they're like, yay. And I'm like, for you too. So it might get a little uncomfortable at first, but I promise it's worth it.
That's so cool.
Yeah, because you start to see like, oh, I mean, I remember when I was first learning this, I was like, wait a minute, does that mean that every time I yell at my husband about something stupid, like there's a towel on the ground or the way he loads the dishwasher, it's more about me than him? Oh, like.
I know. Especially the dishwasher one.
Yeah.
That's my pet peeve.
Wait, there's no right way? Oh, yeah.
That's so great. So how what's next with this? I mean, how many schools are you're in? Are you in all states? I know you're worldwide, but what about in America itself? How many states are you in?
I don't have the exact count right now, but I'm pretty sure we're in the 30.
Wow. That's amazing.
So it's really, it's humbling because, for us, the way this kind of came about was I was charged, like I said, when I took over the S.P.A.R.K initiative, I was charged with not only taking it over, but building a teams so we could donate our program locally. And so really the curriculum was how, in my mind, how am I going to train people to do this? You know how it is.
Yeah.
Like, can't even talk about it right now. And so that's all we did was kind of go in classrooms and write down what we were doing for 2 years. And then in 2016, when we released it, I can remember, so for 2 years we just did that, and then we released it to the public. And I can remember pacing the hallway going, oh my gosh, I mean, what if no one buys it? I just spent 2 years on this, and it skyrocketed in a way that I just knew that people were hungry for it. And all of a sudden we were in, 16 different countries. And when I tell people that in the States that are like schools that are purchasing, they're like, wait a minute, what? Why haven't we heard of this yet?
Yeah, really. I know.
But it's really, it's just humbling. It really is.
So tell people, I know you have different programs for different age groups. So say there's somebody listening that's in their school district and they don't have this. How do they get it? How do they introduce it into their school system?
Yeah, so you can go to SP.ARKcurriculum.org and see all of the different age groups. But we have programs for children, for preteens, middle school age, and high school. And on the website, there's tons of resources for parents, for teachers, for administrators, and there's definitely a lot of different ways to get in contact with us. So SP.ARKcurriculum.org is the best way.
Okay, wonderful. Well, and so I've spent hours on that website. It's fascinating. And it's so wonderful that you're bringing this in at this age, like you say, not waiting for people to be in prison and or just even live miserable lives, thinking that this is all that's possible for them. So I can't thank you enough for your work and for everything you're doing for this community and our children. So thank you
so much. Thank you.
Oh, it's wonderful. Well, I hope to see you soon.